Well, good afternoon, WonderCon. Thank you all for coming. We are going to jump right into our self-publishing panel. Before I introduce the panelists, I just want to get a quick pulse from the audience. How many of you think you may have a question about self-publishing? I want to make sure we save time for questions. Just give me a quick show of hands. We do have prizes for those of you that ask questions, so let's see the hands go up.
There you go.
There's the flavor.
All right, so first up, I'd like to introduce Marcus McNeal. Marcus is the CEO and editor-in-chief of Odyssey Comics, an independent publisher known for championing high-quality, creator-driven stories spanning fantasy, sci-fi, and supernatural horror. As a versatile industry professional, Marcus specializes in crowdfunding success, fair creator practices, and independent publishing innovation, ensuring that Odyssey Comics isn't just making great books, it's reshaping the indie comics landscape. He brings sharp insight, hard-earned experience, and a no-nonsense approach to helping creators turn their passion into sustainable success. Thanks for being here, Marcus.
Thank you guys for having me. And my wife for the learning biography.
I don't read mine now.
Next up is Jessica Maison. Jessica is a sci-fi, fantasy, and horror author, screenwriter, and comics creator. Plastic Girl is her coming-of-age eco-punk YA novel series set in a climate apocalypse. She's the writer of the award-winning graphic novel series Mary Shelley's School for Monsters, and her short comics are featured in anthologies such as Cthulhu is Hard to Spell and Nightmare Theater. She's an IBPA Benjamin Franklin Gold Award winner and Forward Indies Award nominee. Her sci-fi speculative short stories have been published by Terraform, and she is the founder of Wicked Tree Press. Next up, Arthur Ebuen. Art started as an Emmy Award-winning animator for Futurama and The Simpsons. Over the last 2 decades, he's moved on to tell other brand stories as an associate creative director in advertising and as a writer, producer, and director for video and film production. He recently wrote the geopolitical thriller California Inc. at Studio 12-7. We are also happy to have Barbra Dillon with us. Barbra is the co-founder and editor-in-chief of Fanbase Press, a GLAAD Media award-winning and Eisner and Harvey Awards nominated publishing company and media outlet that seeks to produce new and distinctive works that give voice to the themes, ideals, and people that make geekdom so exceptional. She also serves as board member of the Graphic Medicine International Collective, an executive committee member and co-coordinator of programming and marketing for the Latinx Comic Arts Festival, and an advisory board member of the Santa Monica Comics Company. Dave Law is the artist and co-creator of the ongoing sci-fi space opera, The Space Auditorium, the mind-bending Thoughtscape 2319, cyberpunk horror Wolfpunks, and the geopolitical thriller California Inc. He's contributed to anthologies such as Wrong Magnetic Poles and Paranoid American History 101. He focuses on visually exploring the unknown and creating often dystopian worlds with a style that's bold and adventurous, with a good dose of humor and lightheartedness. I'm your moderator, Justin Giampaoli. I was an award-winning critic at 13 Minutes and Comics Bulletin for over a decade. As a writer, my work includes the self-published crime caper, The Mercy Killing, introductions and bonus content for New York Times bestseller DMZ at DC's Vertigo imprint, the alt history epic Rome West, and the sci-fi drama Starship Down. Both of those were with artist Andrea Moody at Dark Horse Comics. And recently, I was the editor of the geopolitical thriller California Inc. So I'd like to open with a question for all of you. I'd like each of you to give your take on this. As I've talked to various creators, there seems to be this kind of universal experience that you either have a singular light bulb moment, kind of an aha moment that brings you to self-publishing, or there's a series of events that push you down this path. So I'm curious for each of you, what led to your decision to self-publish, whether you kind of do that as a solo practitioner or as a publisher. Why don't we start on the end with Dave, and we'll work our way back to me.
Thanks. I always wanted to be a comic book artist, and when I first started trying to do that, the path to that was portfolio reviews and getting a publisher to like your work and trust you enough to assign you to a book. It's a really hard thing to accomplish, especially if you don't have any body of work. So I tried that a couple times, and it didn't really work, and so I just kind of lost motivation for it. And I just kind of went along with my life until I kind of learned about Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and how they wound up getting traction and their story. I won't tell it here, but it's a really interesting one to read about if you guys ever get into it. But it really shined a light on how powerful doing it yourself can be. And being a big fan of like punk rock music, that mentality has been with a lot of indie music artists for a long time too. So I realized that it was definitely possible to transfer that to comic books as well. And at one point I decided, you know what, I'm just gonna go for it. And me and my partner on the book Space Auditorium, we decided we were just gonna make the comic. And we didn't really have any like framework or any kind of idea of how it was gonna be. We decided we were just gonna make it and we're gonna figure it out along the way. Luckily at the time we decided to do that, self-publishing has become a lot easier. There's a lot more options to not only create the books, but to distribute them and also market yourself. So all those things are readily and usually available at this time. It's probably just a matter of kind of learning the best practices of each one or finding a way to manipulate it to work for you. So I guess what we're all here to learn about. But yeah, I learned it by coming to these conventions, coming to these kinds of panels and talking to other people who've done it. And it's I think probably a lot easier than some people might think to bring your book out. Now getting that traction and having it expanded being Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles is a whole other story, but
It's cake is a cakewalk.
But self-publishing, like I said, is a lot easier than you might think. And so hopefully you'll get an idea if some of you are thinking about doing that on how to maybe approach that.
Mine was definitely the long and winding road to get here. I came out first I grew up in theater, mostly backstage, while waiting for my brother to be done acting. So that was where I was always surrounded by very talented people, which I very much appreciated, but it gave me the drive to want to help creative people to do what they love. So I came out to LA to work in talent management and production, which I did for a number of years, but unsurprisingly, I got very jaded by Hollywood. And because I was not seeing the talented people that I knew all around me having the opportunity to share their voice, to share their story with the audiences that deserve to hear those stories. And so that was the genesis for Fanbase Press. We actually started as Fanboy Comics and rebranded to Fanbase Press. But we were always sort of a strange bird in that we did have stories that we wanted to tell, and we wanted to tell other stories, but given that we were a boutique company with only a few people behind the scenes, we also dueled as a media outlet because no matter what the opportunity was, we wanted to get these voices and these stories out there. So no matter if it was publishing them ourselves or doing promotion through reviews, interviews, podcasts, any other method that we had, we only wanted to be able to share those stories.
Light bulb moment. After writing the first 4 issues of this comic, California Inc., Justin, my editor for something like I'm the writer for it, and Dave's our illustrator. Before we met Dave, the original plan was to do 4 pages, 10 of the traditional around 4 pages, have the character designs, have the outline, and a pitch doc, and then we slowly pitched to different publishers. And knowing from Justin's experience that sometimes it takes months, sometimes it takes years to even hear back. And if you do get picked up, it might be another couple of years before it gets in the queue to be made. In that process, I met this great empower of indie folks, as we all know in this world, is Charlie Stickney. And he took a look at my script and said, hey, do this thing called Kickstarter. And go check out this panel I'm doing with you all here and learn about self-publishing, or at least it sparked my interest. And that was light bulb moment. I remember calling Justin saying, I'm gonna do this thing called self-publishing. And he's like, what's that? And cut to 2 years since, three of us just celebrated last night our 4th issue, the final issue of our 4-issue miniseries just finished. And we're empowered to do whatever we want, make what we want for whoever. We just want to make something we want to see on the shelves without somebody like a giant corporation editing us down to what they want. And so hopefully this panel is the same for you as it did for me at that moment. I just felt so empowered. It's still a lot of work, but it's a new avenue. And that was a light bulb. It was a panel, just like this.
Thanks, Art.
Well, I came out of college quite a long time ago, and I moved out here to Los Angeles to be a screenwriter. And I did all the steps. I worked at Creative Artist Agency. I was a TV writer's assistant on the show called Keen Eddie. I got my agent with my writing partner. We wrote our spec script. We went out with our spec script. We got a bunch of producers interested in it. It was a horror comedy. They all wanted to make Saw at this time. I'm going to date myself. Everyone wanted to make a gory movie. So were not able to set that movie up. We kept going out with spec scripts. We kept going on meetings. We were 2 women. Now it's great. It's a lot better now for women. Not perfect, but there's a lot of voices now. We did this animation pitch, I remember being kind of the moment, where we went to every big animation. We were at DreamWorks, we were at Sony, we were at Album, we had a producer taking us, we were so excited, we'd gone this far, And we got up pretty high at Sony and DreamWorks, but every single company, even all of the little indie ones, were saying the same thing to us constantly, like, we can't do this project because it's an original hero story for a girl lead, and it's not based on a book. And they're like, girls read, boys drive the movie tickets. This was at that time, so I'm dating the time. And we were like, God, I guess they really don't want to do this kind of story. And we both, I think our hearts were a little broken by that. And I think that was a light bulb moment for me that just percolated for a while. It was like, you are told all these steps to do. You do everything right, and you hit a wall. And there's got to be a reason you're hitting a wall. And I think that is when I decided I wanted to tell stories at a slightly smaller level than film. I still work, dabble in film, don't get me wrong, but I wanted to tell stories. I wanted to go back to writing books, go back to prose, and then I went to a comic book convention, and I do believe I saw a panel with you on it that Ryland was doing, because my friend TJ dragged me. He's like, Ryland went to our college. I'm like, all right. And I was very impressed with Barbra, and I was impressed with the whole indie comic scene. And I just wanted to learn about it because it was visual, it was cool, and that was my light bulb moment. It just took me a while to figure out how I was going to do a comic. I didn't learn it, because it wasn't my medium. And I do think that was it for me. It was like, I want to tell the stories and I don't want to wait because the waiting can kill you. I think that's where anyways, so that's why I self-publish comics and books, and not the tradition. And I'm not against traditional publishing, don't get me wrong, but yeah.
Oh man, my light bulb moment goes back really, really far. I think it was probably about 1986 or so. My dad got me a Spider-Man lunchbox with one of those lovely John Romita Sr. Spider-Man images plastered on it. And I took it to my room and I grabbed some crayons and pencils and I drew it. And I was like, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. And showed it to my dad, and it came out pretty good. And everything after that was just me, whether coming up with stories or learning artwork. I knew that I wanted to make comics someday. And probably along my teenage years, I knew I didn't just want to make comics. I wanted to own whatever I did. But it was a very winding road for me. I got into the corporate world and get married and have kids and everything like that. Those dreams they go back to the wayside a little bit. But as I got older and I was at a good place in my career. My son was getting older, so I didn't have to be dad 24/7 all the time. He was starting to get to the point where he's like doesn't want to be bothered with me. He's watching Yo Gabba Gabba, whatever the case is. And I was like, okay, now's my time to sort of do something. At the time, I was also moonlighting my own website, just covering comic book media. I was a media partner with First Second Books, Macmillan. So I had all this access to all these comic creators all the time. And I took every opportunity that I did, whoever I got to interview, whoever's books I got to review, to really crack their heads open and learn as much as I can probably before I did anything comic-wise, I just spent a year of just talking to people and comic creators. And what you start to learn is that comics is a small community. It's really small. There's one Kevin Bacon between any of us on this panel and like Stanley. Like it's that short. But what I found out is that those people make themselves available to you. So whether it's like Jimmy Palmiotti, Amanda Connor, or Marv Wolfman, like all these people that are legends to me that I grew up idolizing, making time for me and talking to me about this stuff. That was just a huge deal. And if I could go back in time, I would spend another year talking to people and learning as much as I could. But my modern light bulb moment was, I think I was at C2E2 Chicago, probably 2019 or so. And I was speaking to a creator, ZM Thomas, who, if any of you are familiar with the Bible too, with Source Point Press, he made that. And I was really like down, and I was talking to him, and he's like, so what's going on with you and trying to make comics? I'm like, I'm trying to get in as an artist. I pitched some ideas. I give in stuff in this place and that place. I haven't heard anything back. He's like, okay, what are you doing? Are you an artist or writer? I'm like, yeah, I'm an artist and writer. I'm both. He's like, okay, and how comfortable are you with maybe stepping out on your own and doing something? And I was like, I guess I'm okay with it. He says, are you any good at, selling things online and being a presence? And I said, that's literally my day job. I'm an e-commerce analyst. I sit and think about selling things online all day, 24/7. He's like, okay. He's like, are you stable in life? Like your financials and everything good? And I'm like, yeah, I'm doing good. He's like, okay, well, sounds like you don't need a publisher. Hell, if anything, you should be a publisher. And then it was ding. And from that moment, that's when Odyssey Comics was born. I thought it wasn't enough for me to just create an avenue for myself. I'm a person that's big on found family. I wanted to find other people that was on that same journey, new or emerging talent, people who had those frustrations, whether at the small press level or creators who have some experience, have been doing it for a while, and say like, hey, you got those passion projects, you got those things that align with the vision of things we want to publish. Bring in somebody, let's work on something, let's make sure everything aligned, and then we go from there. And then, now 13, 14 titles later.
Great. Thank you guys for sharing those origin stories. That's fascinating. Marcus, you mentioned the word community, and that's a perfect segue to my next question. So there seems to be this consensus among creators and publishers that creating a community is really one of the building blocks of successful self-publishing. So I'd like a couple of you to kind of chime in on this. Barbara, let's start with you. What tips and best practices can you share as a small press publisher? Like, how did you guys build the fan base at Fanbase Press?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and I will underscore and co-sign on the fact that I think community is key. I think that especially for independent creators and publishers, it's hard out there. There are a lot of barriers, known and unknown, that will stand in your way, and the best way to get over those barriers is by working together, is by collaborating and just supporting one another, just because it's the right thing to do. For us, we were a strange bird when we started in that we were both a publisher and a media outlet. For those of you who have been in any stage of the creative process, you know that it takes a long time to make a comic book. And we really, it was part of our ethos of our company to be supporting and giving voice to other people. But we found that by doing that, by supporting other people, we were creating the community. And I think that a lot of times what's really important is just being yourself. And I think that if you are a genuine person and you want to be a part of this community, it is about being a part of the community, and it is about being supportive of other people. And so no matter what that form may take, because you may have limited time, limited resources, you don't have to build an entire community just to be a creator, just to be a publisher. But I think that if you are giving equal time to taking a genuine interest in your colleagues around you, in the folks who are coming up while you are, but also, those who have come before, taking the time, like everyone has said, about, going to other panels, learning from creators, asking questions, you are already doing your part to be a part of the community, because you're recognizing that there have been folks who have come before you, you're recognizing that you have colleagues at the same level or near to the same level that you are, and by being supportive of those individuals, you are building the community, you're being a part of the community, and that community, because it's such a wonderful place, is going to be supportive right back to you.
Great, thanks, Barbara. All right, what about you from the perspective of kind of a solo practitioner of self-publishing? What have you found would be be the tips and best practices you'd share with aspiring creators?
Go do it. No, that is it. And we talked about, you just mentioned this, that Barbara is, and Justin just talked about it. We don't have like an office, right? Where people who work in a corporation, you can meet people, build your community. In this comics community, we're all so separated in some way or form. So go meet as many creators as you want and as you can. Find out which ones you get along with. Stay in touch with them. Meet with them when you can. Like Justin and I will grab lunch once a month or something if we can. And I'll try to meet with Barbara's folks online every Saturday morning, which they host a great Zoom, open Zoom meeting for us creators to meet with, just to continue to feel like you're part of something. And you find people you can bounce stuff off of. So build that community. Then when it's time to push your book out, that awesome community will signal boost you as well. It's a very respective community, and that was probably the biggest surprise is when I finally pushed our first book out. The amount of folks, I felt like I was a nobody, and I probably still am, but when it went out, we had such a huge reception that I did not know existed until I realized how we met between the three of us that, we've been talking about this book. So one of the tips I can give you is, it's hard. We can all be kind of introverts. Go meet folks. There's a lot of great people. I'd say a big chunk of the comics community, especially the indie folks, this is a great line I heard from the Kickstarter panel, is we just want to see each other win. And so if we can meet someone else who's trying to come up as well, and we can signal boost them, we will do it. And I've done it as much as people have done it for me. And it's so fun to watch each other's projects get funded. It's just such I could feel each other high five, like through digital platforms, just like, you did it. So go meet some folks and go build your community. It's probably, we're animals, we need to have a community to survive, so go build it.
Thanks, Art. Another one of the many hats that self-publishers need to wear that can kind of make or break your success is just general marketing and running a successful campaign. Once you've created something, built that community, you kind of shift into that marketing and campaign phase. So I'd like to ask a couple of you around this. Jessica, I'm really impressed with your web presence at Tree Press. I think your site is so accessible to new readers, and I love how you put the kind of appearances up there. What would you share as far as best practices for both just general marketing and running a campaign as well?
Okay, well that makes me feel really good because I'm always worried about my website, and I find marketing to be the hardest part because I'm not from it. I'm not good at it. Whenever I need to talk about myself to people, it feels very awkward for me. So as far as like the website, I'm working toward the website. This is part of sales and marketing, but I do think a lot of independent publishers, both at our level and all the way up to the mid-level ones, are going in this direction where direct sales and engagement on your site are very important. And I want to slowly curate an experience when you get there, which is a step-by-step process. So I'm just happy that I got us somewhere where you felt very invited. And then ultimately, I want to have things for my readers and people who buy the books to do on the site that are interactive and engaging, a reason to come to the site versus to go somewhere else. So that's something I'm working on. As far as building a campaign, I guess, for launching a book or on Kickstarter, I think what I'm good at is figuring out all the visual components and coming up with a plan. What I need to still work on, and which is the harder part, and is usually just money, really, is getting the larger reach, for that stuff. So when I build a campaign for a Kickstarter or for a book launch, is I really try to figure out what character and what story I'm trying to really, get everyone to focus on. And I did hire a company, Metal Ninja Studios, that worked with me a little bit on my last couple of Kickstarters. But my first one was really important to me to pick those important images, the important story components, and really focus on them and really just kind of hammer them in over and over again. That the things that would pull you in a little lost. I will say I learned a lot from the other Kickstarter people that I watched before me, because they do it really well. And I don't know, you're not just talking about Kickstarter, but since we were talking about Kickstarter, I went into Kickstarter. It's just really, this part's really hard. And so it is really about not being, as I'm getting a little scattered right now, it's about staying focused on a few key images and in one story, and the elements that are really the heart of your story and the heart of what you're trying to say to people, and the thing that you think will appeal to that group that likes reading that genre, And I don't know, Marcus, you're probably a little bit better at marketing, but yeah, I'm trying to build a story around one title right now, and then hopefully it can expand through my whole company.
Okay.
And I feel a little lost. I'm gonna stop.
Yeah, Marcus, I did want to bring you into this too, because I think
Oh boy.
Odyssey Comics has such a diverse set of titles, and you're actually one of the few small press publishers that's openly accepting unsolicited submissions, which I think is fantastic. So, two-part question. How do you vet new projects you potentially want to publish, and then talk to us about the marketing campaigns as well?
Well, you learn a lot from going through people's garbage, first and foremost. I think one of the key things is, it kind of goes back to the community aspect, because I try to keep a pulse on so many different people. I follow so many people, I interact with so many people. When I'm here at WonderCon or any conventions, I talk to a lot of people. Art was just some guy I bumped into at RocketCon 3 years ago, and we talk constantly since then, and always support each other. Like that. Every person is a world. That's one thing you got to keep in mind. So a lot of times when I get a submission, I'm interested in it. I already know who the person is who's submitted it. I've already clocked them for a number of times. If I didn't reach out to them previously already, there's someone who, if their quality is there, I'm already familiar with it. So if I want to approach it, it's probably already a yes in my head. So I'm looking for a reason for that person to screw up and give me a reason to go through with it. But it really comes down to aligning on the vision, because when you're a publisher, of course you want things that work in your brand. And I think what we've done at Odyssey is I've tried to make things that really feel like, okay, you're getting an Odyssey book, it's going to feel like a quality, high quality book that you would get from any other larger publisher. But for me, it's about the people. And a lot of times, I'm not so much as saying yes to a project as I am saying yes to a person. So when it comes to both selling yourself and marketing your projects, if you're independent, if you're a creator, you're starting out, 9 times out of 10, people aren't interested in your book, they're interested in you. So if you are selling yourself and you make yourself a person, even if your book isn't all that great, you'll find support and you'll find people who are backing you on that journey, who want to see your growth. So I do my best to make time with everybody. I don't do anything strictly over email. Every person that I've brought aboard, obviously we've done a project with, I usually have like a 2-hour session with them, and not specifically even really going over the project, just talking to them how they feel about the industry, where they want success, what they really see and realign on that fundamental level. And then what I found is that everything else builds upon that. And once you find those people, it becomes easy to work with them. So there's publishers out there that have all these horror stories of dealing with talent and everything like that, and I don't have that experience. I cannot feel that in that regard. Because the people that we bring aboard are first and foremost good people, good creators, and then just from the relationship that builds out of that, the community that we build internally from that, good work comes as a byproduct. So you live right and you reap results is what it comes down to.
That's great, thanks for sharing that. Dave, so we've heard from publishers and writers, but I want to ask you this question specifically as an artist. Do you think you approach marketing and campaigning differently as an artist, or what is your approach in terms of best practices?
I guess I haven't really ever thought about if it's different from how other people do it. I think I approach it much more visually, and so I've always been kind of more drawn to the ways that you can do that. Instagram, of course, is one where it's mostly visual stuff, so I use that a lot for kind of getting not only my artwork out and getting the exposure, but it's a great also way to network, because people will see your work and that speaks for itself first, and then you can also kind of get to know them. I also really have loved conventions. I think I always suggest people who want to get into making comic books to make one and show up at these conventions, and if you can get a booth, get one. because then your work will be out there. People can oftentimes are walking around looking for artists or looking for writers or whatever you might be. And when they can see your work right there and talk to you and get a good idea of who you are and your work, I think that's probably one of the most compelling ways you can kind of come across to someone. So like a lot of the artists that I've seen that kind of shy away from any kind of in-person like conventions or art shows or any of those kinds of things, it becomes really hard. I mean, the internet is there, but it's just kind of, that's the introduction to you. And then when they can actually see and talk to you, like Marcus was saying, that really can kind of solidify whether or not someone wants to work with you or buy your product. These days, it's not just about the work. They are also very curious about the people behind the work. And so the more you can kind of give that story, the more likely you are to kind of get that connection.
Great, thanks. Another area I wanted to touch on, because I sometimes see this part of the process getting glossed over when people talk about self-publishing, is finding a printer and handling order fulfillment. So Art, let's start with you first. Studio 12/7, what have you found are kind of the common obstacles when it comes to printing and order fulfillment, and how do you overcome those?
I come from advertising and design, so it's best practice in general to get at least 3 quotes, just so you know you're doing your due diligence to make sure that you're finding out the best possible. You might have somebody who give you, oh, this is my person, they have the best blank, and then I find out that someone has the same thing but for less and fulfills better and has better customer service. And that's because I'm making sure of doing that. So make sure you get 3 quotes. That's just in general in life. If you're looking for a car, get 3 quotes or whatever. Fulfillment, that's important. Think about you as a purchaser ordering something and not being fulfilled because someone sat on it. You ever buy anything on eBay and the seller doesn't send it right away? We're also used to Amazon. I know that's a big monster. You can send it within seconds. But we do have that instant gratification thing. So as the creator, we tend to think that people will just understand that I'm tired, I'm not done, I'm taking my time, you paid me for it, you'll understand. And then you flip the switch and you're the one purchasing or backing on Kickstarter and you're waiting. I'm waiting on one that's going on 2.5 years now to fulfill. And that is, I feel like they stole it from me. And there's nothing more frustrating than that. And as Dave was talking about, anytime I see that person's work, I will not consider purchasing that work ever again. Because I'm following people too, and it's getting around. So fulfillment, take care of you folks, because if anybody here knows Mark Silvestri, as big as he is, he knows his fans, what makes him him. And he treats every single fan so well. And if you're unfortunate enough to be in line to get a signature from him, and someone asks for a commission, he'll spend 40 minutes on that one commission, but be very kind of everybody in line. So treat your audience and your readers really well and fulfill properly, not just quickly and all haphazardly. So do it right and give it to them ASAP because they backed you, and then guess what's going to happen? They're going to come back because you gave them a great experience, you gave them a great story, because that's what you're going to give them. You're going to give them great products on time, high quality. Do it again. And they'll keep it back, do it again.
Marcus, what about you from a publisher's perspective? What have you learned are kind of tips or best practices for printing and order fulfillment?
Yeah, all of that. Fulfillment is still something that's struggle because as a publisher, I'm taking that onus upon myself to get all the creators' work out there. And you see how much we do. And I learned a hard lesson is that I'm human and I'm over 40 years old. And things do not happen as they used to. Once you start lugging those boxes of books around and throwing your back out and stuff like that, and running between your storage facilities and everything, it gets to be a lot. So for me, it's really like Art said, being out there, getting quotes. Thankfully, I've been in the business of supply chain for a long time, so getting RFQs and talking to different vendors at all levels of things is something that I have a lot of experience with and something I've been able to utilize to drive costs down as much as possible and make sure that both our backers and our customers are getting a book that's really good value I'm also able to pass that on to the creators and make sure they're getting paid well too. For me, it's really trusting a few, but making sure that you spread across many. And it happens sometimes. I'm sure anybody who's done a book here, you formatted it perfectly, you've gone over it a million times, you send it to the printer, you get your proof back, and like the cut is just, something's just off, it's just wrong. And those things are gonna happen. You gotta be able to mitigate them as much as possible. And then when it comes down to any sort of additional engagement you can do beyond that, because you're not just sending a book, you're sending joy to a person. You're trying to spark joy out of them, because that creates a response to where they want to come back and back your book again. Whether it's just little extras they get, maybe fun wrapping paper that's inside, just simple things, just cheap, free, easy things that you can do. So just make that a little bit extra for people. One thing I discovered that people like is kind of like black boxes have become like our thing with Odyssey now. We're sharing with people really love the black boxes. I don't spend any additional money on them than anything else, and people like it. Yeah, I'll send you a black box again. All black boxes.
Let's talk a little bit about convention appearances, signings. That's another kind of component of this. Barbara, can we start with you as a publisher? What have you learned are best practices? How do you guys determine what conventions you're going to do, what appearances you're going to do, signings, etc.?
Yeah, that's a really great question. I think that for us, it's a vital part of the process. And I think that it really ties into the psychology of being a customer. Because I think what you're really building is a genuine relationship with your fans, with your readers, with customers. Because it's going to take several, I think it's like something like, 7 touch points that you have with an individual before you really build that trust with them. And I think that's understandable, especially with independent publishing. You know, if you meet a publisher at a con, they're putting out the first issue, you might not know, 6 months from now, a year from now, am I going to find them again? Am I going to be able to get the second issue? If I really love it, if I get invested in the story, I want to be able to continue on, and that's understandable. So a lot of times it may take 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 interactions before you really hook that customer and make a genuine connection, bond with them, that they trust you, that they trust that you're going to continue to put out the story in its entirety. But I think that every interaction is valuable, is important. And I think you want to be authentic, you want to be genuine, you want to be yourself. And I know that everybody has their different approach to being at a con table. It's because everyone has different personalities. And I'll speak for myself, I have a lot of anxiety. It's hard for me, as I would imagine it's hard for a lot of creators to be out there on for 9-10 hours at a time, and putting your heart and soul, the creation you've made, putting it out for people to accept or reject, which is their right to do, but that's really challenging. And so I think that nonetheless, it's important for you to be yourself, to put yourself out there, and to be at as many conventions as you can. It's important to have a formula, for what makes a convention successful. And a lot of times that may not only be a financial formula for you. Sometimes there are going to be cons that might be more beneficial from a marketing perspective, from just that opportunity to be seen, to have another touch point with folks. And it may not be financially viable. And you've got to weigh and balance what are your resources, what can you afford to put out there in terms of paying to be at a con versus allowing to just have an opportunity to meet new people.
Great, thank you.
Just to back on that too, Barbara, the first convention I ever did, I didn't have a single book, not one. It was just going out there, putting a brand out there, like straight up street team stuff, t-shirts, prints, stickers, whatever you could do to throw yourself out there. And I felt like that was a big opening point, because I had a no pressure or low pressure opportunity to engage with people and talk about things and have that experience of, it's not always about the value proposition of doing a convention. Sometimes that little thing, doing that can set you up anything. And actually, I met quite a number of people who are still good friends in the industry today from doing that one little convention. I didn't sell any books, but I sold 10 t-shirts and some prints and things like that. I was able to make it worthwhile. That just changed everything. So think about it in that way. It's not always a strict value proposition. Sometimes it's things you can't quantify in simple dollars, and the price of a booth, it means more than that.
Jessica, what about you with your kind of multifaceted experience in prose, graphic novels, film? What have you learned about appearances and conventions?
Well, I do think meeting people in person and coming to conventions is really important, and I think diversifying which ones you go to is really important. And I am new to the convention game, so I've probably been going to conventions for maybe, my first one was in 2018 or 19. I went to Long Beach Convention, which was pros and cons to that convention, but I did meet a lot of creators there, and I think it's important, and what Barbara said, it's those touch points, and it's not just the readers that are seeing you, it's the other creators, it's the other publishers, it's the other professionals, and they're seeing you, and the more they see you, the better, because they start to recognize you when they see you. And then I went to ALA for the first time last year, and Barbara did as well, and Barbara was there because I saw him. And that was exciting because that was a new touch point that introduced me to new people. Now, the librarians know my brand, that we're there, and that's helpful when you're an independent publisher because libraries are hard, schools are hard, there's all these different readers and different ways to get to them. So I do think part of what I try to do when I'm at a convention is have the extras. I want it to feel like an event. I know my first convention, I had a comic called Pistol, which we are going to finish, and it is coming. I'm very excited. I'm getting the final art and we're going to re-release everything. But I had flowers I went to the downtown flower mart because she is a flower themed, and I was I had flowers on my table. I was so excited, and all the other creators were oh my God, these girls, right? But it worked well. Some people really remembered that and enjoyed it, and so at some level it is about connection, and I do think it is important. As far as with film, that's a whole different ballgame with film festivals and stuff like that, but I do think those are also important. Even if you just get in a little festival, go to it, attend, go to events, be part of those communities. Right now, I don't have a table at WonderCon. I had a table at WonderCon last year, but I'm still here because I still want to check in with everybody. You want to see everybody and make sure you're connecting with them.
So we have about 10 minutes left, so I'd like to open it up for audience questions now. Please keep your questions as brief as possible, and we'll try to get through as many as we can to get as many prizes out to you as we can. All right? Who'd like to be first? There's a microphone in the middle here, or you can shout it out from your chair.
I can shout it out if you can hear me. What are your thoughts on e-publishing, and what challenges have you run into with platforms like Amazon and Apple and your ownership over your IP?
Well, you don't lose your ownership over your IP when you self-publish. And so for me, and I'm going to not speak about comics, I'll leave that for someone else because I don't do comics right now that way. For my prose, I put it up on Amazon directly. My issues with Amazon right now are big, but and then I do draft to digital for the other platforms. So I would say it's important to make sure you're on all the platforms and you diversify and you don't just stick to one. Some people like to do Kindle Unlimited, you get paid more, but then you aren't reaching all these other readers through draft to digital, or you can, and I did Hoopla separately, and then Overdrive you also do separately, correct? And so I'm sorry, trying to remember. And so you're not going to lose any rights, but you do want to make sure when you put your book up, if you're self-publishing, that you had an editor and a proofreader involved. Because if you put, but it's important because one, you'll get stopped on Amazon if their AI does it. I'm sure Draft to Digital does as well. But you don't want to put up your work without that chance, because you don't have self-publishing. You can just press publish, and everyone has it. And once you do that, they have it and they can see it. And so, my best practices are make sure you do a copy editor for sure. Do a couple rounds with them, and definitely do a proofreader, and definitely do that a couple rounds because you're both going to miss a ton of stuff. But that's the platforms I use, and try to stick when you say you're going to publish, and because for a prose book, you have a launch. I'm going to release my book, and people pre-order. Whether they're just 3 people pre-ordering or they're 300,000 people pre-ordering. You want to make sure to hit those deadlines. So set a deadline that you can meet, and work up some hype. Try to get it reviewed, especially if you want to be in the libraries. You want to try to get it reviewed. So you need to set a publishing date 4 months out so that you can email these places. and at least submit your work and try to get the review in. I know they like forward reviews. They still like Kirkus reviews for sure, right? Publishers Weekly. They're all hard to get reviews and to get them to review your thing, but it is worth a try because the libraries do like a thing to be reviewed. You know, if you're trying to get now I'm getting into hardcover. But, sorry. So anyway, but yeah, I think that's for me. That's the answer.
Any other questions? Right here.
Yeah, so as a novice, and not having had much content out there in Substack or even social media, I'm just wondering if you could kind of outline how to start, where to start. Because certain social media platforms now, even though I just started 2 or 3 years ago, I'm not too sure about. And I see Substack as one of those growing areas. But can you kind of give me a brief outline of like, where do I start in all of this, right? It kind of feels overwhelming. And I'm not talking about comics per se, but fictional writing that appeals to those who are in the healing, spiritual recovery process. You can speak to that, thanks.
That's a really great question. I'm happy to jump in. I think across the board when it comes to creative writing, whether it be, fiction, prose, comics, etc., I think it's important to start small. If you don't have a lot or anything out there, start with things like comic book anthologies or short stories, because then you're providing yourself with a achievable goal. Because if you take on a 12-issue sci-fi fantasy epic, that's a lot of stress and anxiety to place on yourself and responsibility to complete that. Whereas if you do something like a comic book anthology, you are responsible for 6, 8, 10 pages. A lot of the brunt of the pre-press, editing, etc. work is going to fall on the editor and the team behind the anthology, and you will be alongside a host of different creators and, of course, the organizers for the marketing process. So you can kind of see how all of that works while still contributing, while still having a physical product that you get out of it at the end. But again, it all comes back to being something manageable and doable for you to do. Briefly, I'll say in terms of the marketing side of things, it is like, I think going back to Jessica, what you were talking about, it feels insurmountable, especially right now. It's kind of a Wild West in terms of the various platforms, whether they're going to be around tomorrow, next week. My advice is simply to take on what's doable for you. None of us are able to tackle every single one of the social media platforms, newsletter platforms, etc. It's great to diversify, but diversify in a way that's doable for you. If you can do 2 social media platforms to start, fantastic. Maybe a newsletter on top of that at a cadence that works for your schedule, fantastic. And also find platforms that benefit you. If you're a fan of TikTok, but maybe your project doesn't do well on TikTok, maybe put that aside for just personal use and focus on platforms that will benefit you.
So I think we have time for one more question. Let's go way, way in the back there.
What is some good, stock content that you could put out for a writer on Instagram and TikTok? If you don't have a visual aspect to what you do, what is some stuff? Is it just narrating your own work, getting someone to read it for you? What's fun, engaging content for just somebody who just types words?
Sorry.
Thank you.
Start a blog. It doesn't have to be social. You can take your work and put it on a site. I started a silly convention experience site to document my experiences at a con, and started writing more. And then after a year, I'm like, oh, I have a body of work. And then from there, you can take clips of that, then put it on social to say, here's a clip or a quote from something that I've written. If you want to read more, point it back to your longer form. So, you've seen this with video. There's a longer interview like this panel, and we'll put out short clips of funny moments to get your attention on social, and then point you to the full verse of it. So it doesn't always have to be fully living on social. That's there to just grab your eyes for a second because you're doom scrolling anyways. But the full version of it should live somewhere where it can and should live. Social is meant for small things. That's why there's always link in bio. That's my suggestion.
Thanks, Art. So you did ask a question. Meet me in the back of the room after the panel concludes. I'll have a prize for you, and let's give our panelists a nice round of applause.